The world is currently experiencing rapid and profound changes that could alter the course of history. Yet many people remain unaware of the significance of these events, particularly in the United States. Much of the media's focus is on the upcoming presidential election, with attention on figures like Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. However, behind the scenes, monumental shifts are occurring that could reshape the global economy, potentially as impactful as a major war. These events receive little coverage in mainstream media, but their consequences will be felt across the globe. At the heart of this quiet yet monumental change is the US dollar, which has served as the world's dominant currency for over 7 decades. Its position as the primary reserve currency is being increasingly challenged, and this challenge is growing stronger every day. The upcoming BRICS summit, scheduled for October 22nd to 24th, 2024, could mark the beginning of a new global financial order. The ripple effects of this shift will be felt not only in the US, but around the world. To understand the gravity of the situation, we must first appreciate the central role the US dollar has played in the global economy since World War II. Following the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, the dollar was established as the world's primary reserve currency. This meant that most international trade and financial transactions were conducted in dollars, and foreign governments held large reserves of US dollars to stabilize their economies. The agreement fundamentally reshaped the global financial landscape, giving the United States enormous economic influence and cementing the dollar as the backbone of the world economy. Much of America's success and prosperity can be traced back to this arrangement. For decades, this system functioned well, thanks to the stability of the US economy and the strength of its institutions. However, in recent years, cracks have begun to appear in this once stable foundation. A combination of factors, ranging from the imposition of numerous sanctions on other countries to rising national debt, political instability and concerns about the long-term strength of the US economy, has led many nations to reconsider their reliance on the dollar. Sanctions, especially those imposed by the United States, have been one of the largest contributing factors to the decreasing dependence on the dollar. Countries like Russia, China and Iran have faced significant sanctions that restricted their access to the global financial system, which is heavily dollar-dependent. In response, these nations have sought alternatives to reduce their vulnerability to US financial pressure. This brings us to the upcoming BRICS summit. Founded in 2009 to foster closer cooperation among Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, the BRICS coalition now includes 9 members and accounts for 45% of the world's population and 28% of global exports. The combined GDP of the BRICS nations now exceeds that of the G7 nations. BRICS has long aimed to challenge the current global financial system. The 2024 summit is particularly significant because BRICS recently expanded to include new members such as Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. This newly expanded group now represents around 36% of global GDP and nearly 46% of the world's population. During the summit, the BRICS nations are expected to discuss ways to reduce their reliance on the US dollar, potentially setting the stage for a new global financial order. Some analysts have likened this summit to the Bretton Woods Conference, which reshaped the world's financial system nearly 80 years ago. The decisions made at this summit could have far-reaching implications for global trade and the US economy. If the US dollar loses its status as the world's primary reserve currency, the consequences could be dramatic. The value of the dollar could plummet, leading to higher inflation and making goods and services more expensive for Americans. Additionally, the US would lose much of its ability to impose economic sanctions, a critical tool in its foreign policy. This could significantly weaken the country's global influence. Former US President Donald Trump has voiced concerns about this possibility, warning that the loss of the dollar's dominance in global trade would be akin to losing a war. In an appearance on the All In podcast, Trump emphasized that many countries are moving away from the dollar and this shift could have devastating consequences for the US. His warning should not be dismissed, as the movement to reduce reliance on the dollar is gaining momentum, and the BRICS summit represents a pivotal moment in this larger trend. The world's largest and fastest-growing economies are actively seeking alternatives to the US-dominated financial system. The inclusion of influential nations like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, which have vast reserves of oil and other resources, amplifies the potential impact of this emerging coalition. Together, these nations are positioning themselves to challenge the supremacy of the US dollar. At this point, you may wonder why global economic shifts should be a concern for Christians. The answer lies in the Bible's prophetic teachings about the end times, specifically the role global governance and economic control will play in those events. Scripture offers clear warnings about a future global economic system that will govern the ability to buy and sell, as outlined in Revelation 13, 16, 17. This passage describes a time when no one will be able to participate in commerce unless they receive the mark of the beast. As Christians, it is crucial to stay aware of how global financial trends and political changes might set the stage for the fulfillment of these prophecies. The rise of digital currencies, the move toward economic consolidation, and the increasing cooperation between nations to create alternative financial systems are all developments that could play a role in establishing a global economic structure. Understanding these trends can help us discern how they may fit into the broader picture of biblical prophecy. In Revelation 13, 16-17 it states, "And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell, except one who has the mark or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." This prophecy points to a future system where economic transactions are tightly controlled. While the events unfolding at the BRICS summit may not directly lead to this outcome, they could very well lay the groundwork for such a system. As global financial systems become more digitized and interconnected, the mechanisms for enforcing financial control on a worldwide scale become increasingly possible. The Bible also speaks of a future one-world government led by a central figure, the Antichrist, who will not only govern political affairs, but also oversee a unified economic system. Revelation depicts a world where political and economic power is centralized, and those who do not conform to the system will be excluded from economic participation. The changes happening in the global financial system today are not yet the fulfillment of this prophecy, but they are steps in that direction. The rise of BRICS and the push toward de-dollarization reflect a broader shift toward greater global cooperation outside traditional Western institutions like the IMF and World Bank. The creation of alternative payment systems and the potential development of a new global currency could pave the way for a more unified world economy, with power concentrated in the hands of a few. As Christians, we must remain discerning of how these trends in economic alliances and global governance may evolve over time. We are called to be watchful and to understand the times we are living in. The Bible provides us with prophetic insight into the future, and it is our responsibility to recognize how current events might align with these prophecies. One of the most significant topics being discussed at the 2024 BRICS Summit is the potential creation of a new global digital currency. This currency could be linked to central banks and used across multiple nations, offering an alternative to the US dollar for international trade. The implications of such a currency are profound. Not only would it challenge the dominance of the dollar, but it could also enable the kind of economic control described in Revelation 13. As the world moves toward digital currencies, the possibility of a global financial system that exercises control over buying and selling becomes more likely. Digital currencies allow for increased transparency and oversight, making it easier for governments or central authorities to monitor and regulate transactions. In a future where a single global currency is adopted, the potential for financial exclusion, like that described in the Mark of the Beast prophecy, becomes a real possibility. The Bible warns us about a coming global system that could restrict economic freedom, and today's developments may be steps toward that reality. The countries involved are some of the world's largest emerging economies, and their actions could reshape the global financial order. A time will come when people will be forced to choose between their allegiance to God and their participation in the world's economic system. Those who refuse to accept the mark of the beast will be excluded from buying and selling, effectively cutting them off from the global economy. While we haven't reached that point yet, current trends suggest we are moving in that direction. As Christians, we must be prepared to make tough choices in the future, trusting in God's provision, even in the face of economic hardship. Given these developments, what should the Christian response be? First and foremost, we must remember that God is in control. Nothing happens, nor will happen, outside his sovereign authority. God is fully aware of global events, including political and economic upheavals, and he knows exactly how everything will unfold according to his perfect plan. Most importantly, God knows you, your family, and your personal circumstances intimately. No detail of your life escapes his attention, whether it's financial concerns, health issues, or personal struggles. God is present with you, offering peace and guidance during uncertain times. Though the world may seem chaotic, we can find comfort in knowing that nothing occurs outside of God's plan. He knows the end from the beginning, and before any of these events unfold, he has already seen them and knows how they will bring about his glory and our good. The Bible reminds us that while these things must happen, God's purposes will ultimately prevail. As Christians, we are called to be watchful and discerning. Jesus urged his followers to be aware of the signs of the times and to be prepared for his return. In Matthew 24:6-8, Jesus speaks of wars, rumors of wars, famines, and earthquakes as the beginning of sorrows. These events signal that we are moving closer to the end, but they are not the end themselves. Similarly, the shifting global economy and the rise of BRICS are signs that the world is moving toward greater consolidation of power. However, we must remain focused on the ultimate fulfillment of God's plan. Practically speaking, this means we must stay strong in our faith. We should not allow worldly distractions, whether political, economic, or otherwise, to pull us away from our relationship with God. In 1 Timothy 6:17-19, the Bible instructs us not to put our hope in wealth, but in God, who richly provides for us. As the global economy shifts, we must remember that our true security comes from the Lord, not from the financial systems of this world. We must also be diligent in sharing the gospel. The Bible teaches that time is short, and we are called to make disciples of all nations. As we approach the end of the age, the urgency of the Great Commission becomes even more pressing. In these uncertain times, people are searching for answers, and we have the hope of the gospel to offer. Let us not be distracted by temporary worldly concerns, but instead focus on fulfilling the mission God has given us. Something significant is on the horizon. The global order is shifting, and the world is on the brink of major economic and political changes. The 2024 BRICS Summit may not be making headlines in mainstream media, but it has the potential to reshape the future of the global financial system. As Christians, we must be aware of these changes and understand how they fit into the broader picture of biblical prophecy. While the world's attention may be on the upcoming US elections, seismic events are quietly unfolding that will have far-reaching consequences. The question for Christians isn't whether we should be concerned, but whether we are prepared. Let us watch, pray, and remain faithful as we navigate these uncertain times, trusting that God's purposes will ultimately prevail. No matter what happens in the world, we can have confidence that God is in control and that his kingdom will endure forever.